I'd like to call the meeting to order. Science. I'd like to call the meeting to order, September 15th, 2021. Greater Orlando Aviation Authority Board Member meeting. I'd like the invocation. I'd like to invite the Director of Guangming Temple, Ru Yan, I hope I said it correctly, to lead the invocation.
Thank you all. Please allow me to take my mask off. Good afternoon, Mayor, and good afternoon, Chairman Goods, and the members of Greater Orlando Aviation Authority and guests. Thank you for all inviting me to provide an invocation for today's meeting. Let us pray. Let that guidance from God, spiritual leaders of our many faiths, and the Buddha, allow whom encourage us to act with morality and compassion as we go about our important work. Dear force of faith, this is a turbulent time, both in the air and within the hearts of many. Our citizens and our staff are confronted by a pandemic, social unrest, and an environment in crisis. The board is responsible for planning for today and imagining the future. May they have the resolve to find solutions, the better aviation service, our community, the society, and the world beyond our boundaries. May their moral compass guide them to decisions that assure a safe working environment on the air, on the land, in the air, and above the aircraft. Because this borrows careful attention, many the passengers, the thoughts in their cares, feel at ease in their travels. May the boards assure the pollution is minimized so that the wildlife is well protected, as well as the grass and the seas upon which we all depend. May this board see their responsibility as a noble calling that goes beyond the ballroom, the runway, and the control tower. May they always be mindful that their action affects the lives of millions. Travelers who live in our city, who visit our city, and those who will never be in our sight, but always in our mind and heart. Let us pray that this board will be courageous and wise in all of its decision-making. I end with the word of Venerable Master Xun Yun, the founder of Foguangshan Monastery, of which I am a member. We pray all transportation industry professionals. May they strive for quality in the rendering of service. May they have the virtue of being patient and gentle. May they have an agreeable and kind nature. Ami Tofo. This is the greeting and the blessing that Buddhists always say, meaning that may you enjoy our everlasting life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Evans, thank you. That was beautiful. Dr. Evans, in remembrance, wanted to say something in remembrance of those fateful events, September 11th, which affected so many of us, particularly those of us that fly and travel. And that was just a few days ago. Dr. Evans, would you like to provide us with some additional words of inspiration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Good. Rue, thank you. May God bless you. Dr. Bob, how are you? Let's all bow our heads, please, if you'd like. Heavenly Father, Abba, our Father, you love the words community and you love the words inclusion. You're the father of these two great gifts. Indwell in all of us in this forum. Indwell in every single one of us. Why? So you can bestow your wisdom so we can make great decisions going forward. We're sad right now. Jesus Christ said there would be trouble. And there was trouble on 9/11. But what a response MCO had. What a response. And again, the sense of community and that sense of allness and this mission to make this airport, and with loving competitiveness, the best airport in the whole world. What does that mean? That means we're going to spread sunshine, Carolyn, all throughout. That's our intention. And please bestow, Heavenly Father, one last comment, please bestow the greatest of your gifts, wisdom, discernment, to all in this body, because these decisions matter a lot, and you know that, Lord, and we welcome you. And again, Ruth, thank you so much. Father Bob, thanks for your work. What a pleasure to be here. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen.
Amen. Ms. Ortiz, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Without a pause this time? If you'll join me in.
And give it another
saying,
shot.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Ms. Farmer, please call the roll.
Good.
I'm here.
Mayor Dyer.
Here.
Mayor Demmings.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Mr. Mateer.
Here.
Mr. Weishire.
Here.
Mrs. Kirkgard.
Present.
We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed with the agenda, I'd like to remind the public that individuals who wish to speak on an item being considered on the agenda must fill out a speaker request card. Speakers will allow 2 minutes to provide their comments. Mr. Gerber?
With regard to today's agenda, please state if you have any conflicts of interest to disclose, whether to your knowledge any person has violated the Aviation Authority's lobbying activities policy for any agenda item today, and whether to your knowledge any person has communicated with you contrary to the Florida Sunshine Law with respect to today's meeting. Affirmative signs only. Seeing none, we can proceed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the consent agenda. Do we have any speakers for any consent agenda item?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do any board members wish to consider any item separately? Do we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So move, Chair.
Have Demmings on the motion.
Who seconded? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes. Procurements. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have 4 procurements items that do not require any board action. The first is for a proposal for valet and remote check-in services for Orlando International. The second is a request for proposal for South Terminal janitorial maintenance. And then C and D, the third and the fourth, are requests for letters of interest for design services for taxiways, golf, and hotel at Orlando International. And then the requests for letters of interest for design services for Orlando Executive Airport East Ramp rehabilitation. Those are just for your information to advise you that these are now going to be issued and the no contact period is in effect. And I'll take any questions on any of these items that board members may have.
Any questions? No questions. Mr. Brown, can we proceed with the Chief Executive's report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in your package a Chief Executive report. There is one correction that I need to make. in the report with regard to the service anticipated by KLM to Amsterdam. We received notification after publication that KLM has delayed the beginning of that service, which was scheduled for November 1st, until sometime in the spring or summer. They have not provided a definite date. I would also like to advise you as a part of the report, but it's not in the report, that next month, staff, including myself and Mr. Gerber, will be making a presentation on the requirements for certification for compliance with portions of Chapter 332 of the Florida statutes that were codified in legislation commonly known as HB 915. There were a number of changes, but one of the requirements is that there has to be a certification by this governing body to the district, or the Secretary of Department of Transportation, that we are in compliance. That has to be done by November 1st. We have been working with FDOT for the format of that, but we're going to bring to you the various items and the issues that have to be addressed in that compliance, not the least of which is continuing education that a number of us, including you, that have to have completed. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that, but a formal presentation will be part of the agenda for next month.
Okay. We want to move to new business items. Ron, I understand there are 32 new business items.
Yes, sir. The first one I'm going to make a presentation on, and then I have several others that I'll make. So bear with me a second as I move my slow bones over to the podium.
Sir.
New business item A is one that we've been working on at the staff level for a number of years, and I will recognize more formally later, but I think some of you had the opportunity to meet Robin Hayes, who's the Chief Executive Officer, President, or the Chief Executive Officer of JetBlue Airways Corporation, and Robin will have a few comments later. The item before you, which I've briefed all of you on individually, is a construction design and relocation agreement that applies to JetBlue relocation from their current location on Airside 1 in the North Terminal Complex to the South Terminal. In May of 2018, this board authorized a non-binding memorandum of understanding with JetBlue Airways Corporation to utilize the South Terminal Complex Phase 1. The factors, which many of you being new to this may not know that we utilized in selecting JetBlue, are listed on the chart, the slide behind me. But I think one of the most important, and you've heard us discuss this in other presentations, is the commitment to operate in a common use environment. JetBlue has agreed to that. They haven't always operated in a common use environment. Many airlines do not. But as stewards of public dollars, we determined a long time ago that we needed to use a common use environment for operations because it was much more efficient. JetBlue's agreed to that. They've also had a demonstrated level of international traffic at the airport, which we need in order to justify the construction of a federal inspection station in the South. They've demonstrated a substantive network of bilateral and business relationships. So our plan is to incorporate as many of those relationships into the other airlines that will be operating in the South Terminal so that we can improve connectivity for the traveling public. We also have a demonstrated level of substantial domestic traffic. And JetBlue has been a consistent provider. The pandemic has changed a lot of businesses, but JetBlue has been a steady and ongoing influence at the operations, not only in the state of Florida, but particularly here at Orlando International Airport. And they have demonstrated an interest in expanding the traffic, which is, part of our business model is to continue to expand the traffic to support the economic environment and vitality of Central Florida. And they will have a level of passenger activity which will support a concessions program. So it's now time for a binding agreement. We've had a non-binding agreement. We've worked closely with JetBlue as a part of the construction in the south. You had authorized several months ago a tenant build-out program, the largest portion of which is for JetBlue, and the contractor for that was Clancy and Thays. JetBlue has also asked for some non-standard improvements in their exclusive space. They will have exclusive space to support their crew base, office space to support their personnel down in the south, and other office space. They've agreed to, in the agreement that you are about to consider, they've agreed to the nature of those costs. The current estimate, and we have to finalize that estimate yet, is about $1.4 million. In addition to that, JetBlue is going to put additional funds of their own into that finished space. So they will begin reimbursing us beginning in January of next year in a 12 monthly installments on these amounts. They will be responsible for the physical location of their belongings from North Terminal to the south. They will work with the authority to accommodate international airlines in the south. Again, we're trying to focus on those business arrangements and that connectivity that benefit passengers. The authority agrees to reimburse JetBlue for any amortized amount if for some reason we require them to move back up to the north out of those spaces. In consideration of that, JetBlue has also agreed that that reimbursement will not take place if they go below the 10 gates that they're committed to up through 2024, since the reimbursement period would expand beyond 2024, which would be the next point in time that we would be negotiating, consulting with airlines for a revenue sharing agreement. If they fall below that, then there would not be any obligation on the airport to do that. The only reason that we can foresee where that would ever happen is that if they have to, for whatever reason, economically have to reduce their footprint there, we need to be able to move airlines in that can fully utilize the space. So we've reached accommodation on that. I think it's a reasonable on both parts, the part of both parties. And so the financial impact that JetBlue is currently committed to, the space you see outlined in their expected rate for fiscal year 2022, and as a reminder, we change the rates. The rates will change every year based on the requirements for all the airlines as well as the space. But their rates will be $973,342. That's their annual lease rate, if you will. With that, you have a recommended action, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Tier will move.
Matier?
Move.
We have a motion, we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your indulgence, I would like to ask Mr. Hayes to come forward. He's been with JetBlue Airlines since 2008. He served as the Chief Commercial Officer and Executive Vice President. In 2014, he became the president, and in 2015, he became the Chief Executive Officer. He's overseen some growth in JetBlue. He's also overseen some expansion in JetBlue University. Some of you had the opportunity to discuss that with him earlier today. But I also would like to point out that Robin Hayes and JetBlue has been committed to Orlando. What's not widely known, and I know it only because I had the opportunity to be with Robin in Washington, D.C. several years ago, that following Pulse, Robin and his executive team were down here that following Monday. If you remember, that was a Saturday night. That incident affected a lot of the personnel at JetBlue, and Robin and his team are committed to the employees, the crew at JetBlue. So I say that to underscore the fact that JetBlue and Robin personally have been committed to Orlando and are here for a long-term partnership. Mr. Hayes.
Thanks, Phil, and just thank you to the board for your confidence in us. I had a tour of the South Terminal. Oh, well, I'm not sure. I mean, it's an airport. I'm confused as the master rules, and I'm a CEO of an airline. Anyway, just thank you for the confidence of the board. I had a tour of the South Terminal earlier, so my trousers and shoes are a little bit dusty, so I apologize for not coming here with some nice shiny shoes, but it is an amazing facility. You should be very, very proud at what you've built. And I know it's been a long project, and you know, the thing about this business, as we know, is it goes in cycles. And whether it's a terrorist attack, a financial crisis, or more recently, an epidemic, there's something always. But what we know about travel is that it's enduring, and it will come back. And Orlando and the Central Florida area is so important to JetBlue. Yes, we are based in New York, but there's been some significant expansion down here. And not only have we just expanded our JetBlue University with some new simulators and some new training rooms, but I was there yesterday, and we have 400 people going through there just this week, new hires. And then we have an orientation every week at the moment. So we have thousands of jobs to hire. We're also committed to a long-term expansion, which our infrastructure, properties and development team here is working on. We have Mike and Kevin to continue to build out our facility there. What a lot of people don't know as well, we also have a significant number of other jobs in reservations in Orlando at the John Young Center, and we have hundreds, if not over 1,000 new jobs that we'll be hiring there in the next year or so. So we're very excited about the South Terminal, clearly, but we're even more excited to continue to be part of the Orlando and Central Florida community for years and decades to come. I'd also like to close by thanking Phil and Vicky and the team. You know, I know when my board come to a meeting and they think, and I sort of tell them all the JetBlue stuff, they want to know, well, how's this really, you know, what's really going on here, and how do all your competitors, how are they doing? I can tell you, you have an amazing airport team here, and you've had a lot of stability and great leadership for many years. And Phil is a legend in the industry and someone that I've worked with and enjoyed working with for well over a decade now. And so thank you to you, Phil, to Vicky, and all of the team at GOAA who, for our partnership, have made this happen. You've done an amazing job, and what a legacy that you are leaving with the South Terminal. So with that, thank you very much. We're so happy, and we can't wait to get our flights in there next year and use the South Terminal as the next platform of growth for the coming decade. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We very much appreciate your business. New business item B, Mr. Friel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, mayors. It's a pleasure to speak with you this afternoon. I'll be doing new business items B, C, and D with you today. For new business item B, this is a recommendation of the Concessions Procurement Committee to award invitation for bid 05-22, landside terminal landscape maintenance and irrigation services to Helping Hand Lawn Care LLC. So a little bit of background. I would like to note that the current contract, 5-year contract, has covered the period of December 1st, 2016 through November 30th of this year, with the total fees for this 5-year period totaling slightly more than $7.1 million. With the existing contract set to expire in November, the Aviation Authority released invitation for bid 05-22. The bid requires the contractor to furnish all labor, supervision, equipment, and materials necessary to perform landside terminal landscaping, irrigation, maintenance services at Orlando International Airport. The pricing will be based on unit prices and hourly rates. The amount to be paid to the contractor will be based on work requested, performed, and approved by the Aviation Authority. This is a 36-month contract with 2 one-year renewal options, and is scheduled to commence on or about December 1st of this year. So on June 29th of 2021, the authority received the following 3 responses to the bid: Helping Hand Lawn Care, Aero Ground Tech, and Carroll Keene Landscape Maintenance Incorporated. All the bids were reviewed, and they were found to be responsive and responsible. So this contract includes a minority and women business enterprise participation goal of 30% and a local developing business goal of 5%. However, I would like to note that Helping Hand Lawn Care has been a DBE with the authority for many years. And as a testament to the program, they've been able to grow to where they've been able to submit to this bid as the prime, and then they would have small business participating underneath of them. So this is the program working. It's growing businesses, and now they're passing that knowledge on to new small businesses, which I think is a testament. The 3-year fiscal impact is a not-to-exceed amount of $4,187,150, with funding being from our Operation and Maintenance Fund. And the recommended action is on the screen before you and in your board packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No questions? Move approval. We have a motion, we have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Next item.
Thank you. So on to new business items C and D. This is for fiscal year 2022, staff extension support services at Orlando International Airport. So to avoid some unnecessary repetition, these two business items are being grouped together in this presentation. However, each item presented for your consideration has an individual memorandum included in your board agenda package, which also includes a detailed recommendation and the actions requested by this board. So new business item C is a contract with HNTB for fiscal year 2022 staff extension services for transportation planning and related tasks. This is a 1-year contract with a not-to-exceed fiscal impact of $387,882. And for this item, there will be no small business participation. For new business item D, this is also a 1-year contract with Ricondo and Associates for fiscal year 2022 on-site planning support services. The fiscal impact for this item is $399,840, and this contract is 100% minority and women business owned for this contract.
Did this contract require any MBE participation?
So the master agreement with Ricondo does have small business goals, and the way we work, sometimes there will be, sometimes there won't, but over the aggregate of their contract is really what we try to look at.
Thank you.
So, and what do we, just define a little bit about staff extension and on-site planning. Essentially, it allows the authority to contract for specific individuals or firms to come in and actually work and augment our staff. They're badged, they have an office here, and they work 40 hours a week with us, and essentially we view them as part of the family, essentially. So some background for new business item C. On May 19th of this year, the Aviation Authority Board approved the continuing transportation planning services agreement with HNTB. This is a no-cost base agreement which allows the authority to negotiate for transportation planning and related professional services, including staff extension services. This extension of staff will assist the planning and engineering construction departments on a wide array of transportation issues. For new business item D, in 2020, Ricondo and Associates was selected through a competitive process to provide general consulting services to the authority. The general consulting agreement is again a no-cost base agreement that allows the authority to procure consulting services on an as-needed or annualized basis, including staff extension. For this particular item, this contract, we're procuring on-site planning services from Kind Strategies, which is a minority and women-owned business, and it's for the planning support and wayfinding services here at the airport. The recommended action is on the screen and as well as your board package, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Chairman, I would motion to approve items C and D.
Moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Excuse me.
We do them separately, so.
Separate?
Yeah.
I'll move.
Do I have a motion for item C?
Yes, sir.
I'll
Do I have a
second.
second?
Second.
Favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Do I have a motion? The motion passes. Do I have a motion for item D?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, will be presented by Pete Pelletier, our Director of Information Technology.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, mayors, members of the board.
Definitely.
New business item E is for information technology purchase of Oracle software licenses and product technical support. Okay, by way of background, the Aviation Authority utilizes several different Oracle software products to support business operations across the organization. First, the Oracle E-Business Suite, or EBS Financials product, is an essential financial ERP system that touches just about every department, and it's really critical to our business operations. The Oracle SOA Suite Fusion middleware facilitates data sharing and system integrations, certainly a very important part of our operational systems. And Oracle databases support several of our enterprise applications. IBM Maximo is GOA's maintenance work order tracking and enterprise asset management tool. And ArcGIS is used across the organization for geographic mapping and space management functions. This award will result in the purchase of additional Oracle software licenses and technical support in addition to the current number of existing licenses in order to meet the compliance requirements of an external Oracle audit true-up conducted this year. The audit included a review and analysis of Oracle software license data from the authority, as well as an evaluation of the virtual server and storage isolation configurations on our GOAA network. It was determined that an increase in the number of licenses is required in 3 key areas: the e-business suite, our service-oriented architecture suite, Fusion middleware, and the tool sets for the database administration, performance and tuning packs specifically. The Oracle license model was changed from a concurrent to named user model, where each individual user requires a software license.
I'm sorry, was that something they decided we needed to change, or is that something in-house we decided was?
This is an Oracle generated. They changed their billing. Part of this issue is it's not easy to change, and they have decided from a business standpoint that they're going to change how they're going to license it. And so we have the choice of not using them or paying the license.
Okay, so the additional license cost value is $925,513.50. And the support and maintenance for those licenses is $118,262.93 for a combined not to exceed value of $1,043,776.43. The Oracle software licenses and product technical support are offered under the State of Arizona Maricopa County U.S. Communities Contract for Oracle products and services. And Mythix is the sole provider of Oracle software and services listed in that contract. The Small Business Development Department reviewed the requirements for this purchase and determined that due to the lack of ready, willing, and able certified small businesses for these items, this procurement does not lend itself to any participation requirements. The Mythix quotation for this true-up is an amount of $1,043,776.43, and funding is available from the previously approved Operations and Maintenance Fund. This is the recommended action before you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Questions? No questions. Do I have a motion? Moved and seconded? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm also presenting new business item F. New business item F is for information technology support services. Okay, by way of background, in 2018, 4 firms providing IT consulting services were selected through a competitive award process, specifically W372. Advanced IT Concepts, Barish, Faith Group Consulting, and Technology Management Corporation. The Authority Board approved an IT consulting services agreement with each firm on June 20th of 2018. These no-cost base agreements establish the negotiated hourly rates for each firm. The consulting services include a broad range of services associated with the analysis, planning, and implementation of IT projects and initiatives. And the 4 firms are very well suited to accommodate all our service needs through either their in-house staff as well as their partnerships with a number of sub-consultant firms with the specialized IT experience. A fee has been negotiated with Technology Management Corporation to provide fiscal year 2022 staff augmentation support for 12 IT positions. These services will provide ongoing staff augmentation support for the IT department for the following. 24/7 Operations Center, which handles level 1 IT technical support for the authority, as well as critical software and networks system monitoring. On-site support for telecommunications systems, service desk and desktop support of IT work orders and service calls, specialized application software programming and analyst support, specifically for SharePoint and a product ServiceNow. Technology Management Corporation proposes 12% MWBE participation on this addendum. The fiscal impact is $2,247,836. Funding is from FY22 Operations and Maintenance Fund. And the recommended action is on the screen before you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Moved, move a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion passes. Next item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next items, G through Z, through Zulu, will be presented by Mr. Ramaki, who is going for an all-time marathon record.
Hello, Mr. Ramaki, how are you?
To the task, sir.
Yes, sir. Buckle up.
We're going from 5 down to.
I gotta put my prop up here. Monthly report. Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, mayors, and members of the board. Thank you again for your leadership as we continue to implement our capital plan, as well as our incredible new South Terminal C. And thank you for the kind remarks from JetBlue. Really appreciate that. I'll cover the next 20 items. We're going to start off with golf and hotel. These are tied together. By way of background, the East Airfield Taxiway rehab-related work, there's 2 phases to this. We'll include the complete rehabilitation of the existing pavement for taxiways Echo, Foxtrot, Juliet, Lima, and November, which connect to runway 17 left, 35 right. Design was completed as 1 contract, with construction work intended as 2 contracts per the FAA guidance and directions, Federal Aviation Administration. Construction work in FY22 will be the BP 495 job, and then in fiscal year 23, the phase 2 will be the BP 496 project. This first project will consist of the rehabilitation of portions of taxiways Echo and Foxtrot. Basically, it's milling and overlaying and staying in compliance with the federal AC circulars for compliance with FAA components. The grant was $7.6 million for this, and that was fully executed back on July 30th of this year. Here's the project I'm talking about. So this was built in the early 2000s. What you see in yellow, the top part is Echo. The bottom piece is Foxtrot. And basically, we do pavement condition tests, and we take pavement condition classification numbers, and we do all kinds of testing to make sure they're good to go. They usually last about anywhere between 15 to 20 years, just for your own edification on pavement. So for some issues, this project was publicly advertised on March 28th and 31st of this year. On April 27th, 3 bids were received, as you can see in front of you. The authority staff and the engineer of record, which is an AECOM-AVCON team, have reviewed all the bids received. Middlesex Corporation has verified that this bid is compliant. and that they can complete the project in the amount bid as well as within our schedule. We established a 16% DBE goal, disadvantaged business enterprise, for the project. Middlesex came back and did a good faith effort. They've achieved 13% DBE, so Mr. Morgan and I are going to work with them to improve upon this. So that's our commitment. Fiscal impact is $6.7 million, and a little bit of change. Recommended action for item golf is in front of you. Happy to take any questions on this one.
Any questions?
So it was my understanding when you've got MBE participation goals, you're kind of required to meet them. Are we accepting this with less? Or, I mean, was their scoring affected because of not meeting that goal and then they still went out?
The issue is under the FAA regulations, you either meet the goal or you demonstrate good faith efforts.
And that's
So
what
if you do
did.
not meet the goal, then you have to have demonstrated good faith efforts, and they are more than perfunctory efforts. So the staff evaluates that, and it's really focuses on the level and intensity of the efforts you made to go recruit, and you have to document that. So that's a part of the evaluation to determine whether they met the good faith efforts or not. In some cases, there have been a couple recently that did not meet good faith efforts, and so we recommended to the board that they be deemed non-responsive. In this instance, Middlesex made the efforts and they were deemed to be good faith.
Thank you.
Good. Do we have a motion on this?
Motion to approve.
Motion
Second.
second. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Next.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
can we
sir.
get the motion and second again? Can,
Weishire first.
motion?
Kirkgard, second.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving on to new business item hotel. The fee goes with this. The fee has been negotiated with A Squared Group for a total amount of $648,000 and a little bit of change for construction phase owner authorized rep services, OAR. The services are basically everything needed to start the project up, get it done correctly, and turn it over to operations and maintenance, and then close it out. Small business participation, they've actually proposed a 30% DBE for this goal, for this project, and the fiscal impact is $648,000 and a little bit of change. And the recommended action for item H, hotel, is in front of you. Happy to take any questions on this. These tend to be routine projects for us, just so you know, for last.
Questions?
Move approval.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Next item.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving on to new business items, India through Victor for South Terminal. Again, we have two construction managers, Hensel Phelps and Turner Kiewit, and one D-bomb contractor, design, build, operate, maintain, is Vonderlande, doing our baggage handling system. The project is on target to be substantially complete in approximately 5.5 months. We remain on budget and on schedule. Each of these new business items presented today as an individual memo in your board agenda package. Items India through Mike, the first 5 items are contingency money moves. I'll describe that umbrella again. And then items November and Oscar are staffing of the construction managers for fiscal year 2022. Again, everything I talk about with South Terminal is all still within the umbrella of the $2.8 billion budget.
So none of this takes us over budget?
I say again, I'm
All
sorry.
this is within the budget?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
By way of background, TK and HP were contracted starting in 2016. You've seen this repetitively now for months, so I'm not going to belabor that point. As we presented previously, these items, India through Mike, are routine money moves as we save in the overall South Terminal program budget and reallocate within the 48 GMPs, guaranteed maximum price addendums. Notes are at the bottom, so you'll see for the reason for amendment, items 1 through 5, we're getting into settlements for related civil scopes, fire protection, mechanical trades, framing, drywall, low voltage, plumbing work. And then for items November and Oscar, those are CM staffing. That's the general conditions, as we call it in the business, to get us to the finish line of the project. Hensel Phelps is doing the airside terminal. They're running about 81 personnel as their core staff. And so we negotiated a fee with them through the 31st of March of next year. So we get to substantial completion, have a little bit of closeout, reassess where the money is. Turner Kiewit has a landside terminal as well as the airfield. They're running about 104 people as their core team. Again, they're going to be run through July 31st of next year. So we're allowing for substantial completion, a little bit of punch list, and closeout. And we'll see where the money is. One new item in here is the DBE component with FDOT funding. I want to thank Ms. Sharman and FDOT for helping us just with alternate funding sources. Again, you've seen this before. This is an example of a GMP addendum components. We have general conditions, which staffing by the CM, and we have owner and CM contingency. I previously used the analogy of an umbrella or a rainbow, whatever word salad we want to use. So all these costs are within the existing South Terminal budget, and the bottom line is as we save money, it stays within the budget, and we reallocate, redistribute with Kathleen Sharman's help and funding compliance. Contingency report. So in the GMPs, we have the owner contingency and CM at risk contingency. I mentioned that before. Outside of the GMPs, we have program contingency. We call that program pricing allowance. As we use the contingency, you'll see the bottom line right number, that $47 million decreasing. It decreased from last month. So as we get through all the settlements and redistributing back into those GMPs, we're being very fiduciary responsible with the money. And again, for the South Terminal, everything is established in any kind of money movement goes through our governance as additional quality control. Everything is also under real-time auditing and legal review at all times. The recommended actions are before you for items India through Oscar, and I'm happy to take any questions on those items.
Any questions?
I'm sorry to be the only one to be
No,
asking.
That's great.
So for purposes of clarification, so you had noted in one of them, there was an MBE requirement, there was another one that had a DBE requirement. We'll use the example.
So let me help, if I may.
So M.
Yes, ma'am.
So is that a total of 24 and 11, 35% MBE participation for that contract, or does the DBE and MWBE participation, can they overlap?
So in your monthly report, which I like to refer to a lot, there's participation there. We established at the front end of the project goals for direct cost of work. 20% and 4% was the established goals. HP and TK are either on target or exceeding those goals. I'm leaving the goals in there. Then we introduced the DBE component for additional funding that Ms. Sharman helped us procure. So the goals were established for the last 5+ years now on these components. The DBE is the new element.
Okay, so it's an addition?
Yes, ma'am.
Not, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Because the way the program works is that you've got 3 separate categories. And 2 of those are voluntary. The local developing business, which is race and gender neutral. Those are small businesses headquartered in the 4-county area. MWBEs are socially and economically disadvantaged. They have to be certified under our program, or we accept reciprocal certification from Orange County and the city of Orlando and the state. So when we get federal money or state money, we have to, for funding for projects, we have to adhere to the disadvantaged business enterprise regulations, which are required. The other 2 are voluntary, but we still set the goals based on ready, willing, and able. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Helpful. Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. The motion passes.
Is that on I? We're gonna have, unfortunately, we're gonna have to go one by one.
Okay, we'll go one by one. All right.
Yes, that was I.
That was aye, yes.
Second.
I assume. Move and second on J. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it for J.
Move on K.
Second.
Move second on K. All those in favor say aye.
I
And the motion passes. L.
move to approve L.
Moved and seconded on L. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion on M.
Move approval.
Move and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Is there a motion on N?
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Move on O.
Move on O.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Amaki.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Are
you,
we
board.
supposed to be able to read all that?
This is our eye
Have you brought all
chart.
these people up for us to meet?
I can't, you have met them, sir.
All right.
All right, so this is the public thank you. For a program of this size and complexity, we have a smaller staff, believe it or not. with, when it comes to big jobs like this, adding extreme value added to complete the South Terminal. I just want to take a moment to publicly thank everybody that's involved with South Terminal, because it is a small team doing extraordinary things, as you can see. You heard from JetBlue today. Fentress and H&TB are tucked up in there as our architect of record, and they were our Black Cape concept architects. This is my segue into items Papa through Tango are staffing on South Terminal for the next fiscal year. Item Uniform is for interior waste receptacles, and then item Victor is related to the TSA screening lane acceptance testing. A little bit more background. So here are the respective brief descriptions of work for the reasons for addendums. For Papa, which is H&TB, they're the architect engineer of record, signing and sealing drawings and getting us through to the finish line. So this next fiscal year is construction administration services. New Business Quebec and Romeo are two contracts we have with OAR CMI, Cost Management Inc. So it's for change management services, those settlements that we're working on, as well as technology consulting and support services. Neil Hahn, and I'll talk about that in a little bit of detail in a minute. Item Sierra is also CMTS. That's for our construction phase OER support services, predominantly safety. I'll touch on that for a little bit. And then Tango is NV5, which is formerly Page 1, and they do all of our quality assurance, quality control inspections. And you'll see that we have a new DBE component as well. By way of background on item Papa, in 2015, the architect of record services was selected through a competitive award process. On October 10th of 18, the board approved addendum number 20 with H&TB and the total amount of $13.3 million, a little bit of change for FY19 construction phase services. Since 2015, the board approved amendments numbers 1, 2, and 3, as you can see. So why are we here? A fee has been negotiated with H&TB for fiscal year 2022 for the total amount of $3.5 million, a little bit of change. And the services include everything required to finalize design components and construction administration to get us to the finish line by early next year. Small business, H&TB Corporation proposes in this particular one a 23.7 DBE participation amount, and H&TB's participation day for MWB and LDB is listed before you. Fiscal impact is $3.5 million and a little bit of change, all within the South Terminal C budget. Recommended action for item Papa is before you. Happy to take any questions on this H&TB item.
Chairman, I would move approval on item P.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Next item.
Sir, items Quebec through Tango are owner-authorized rep services for South Terminal to help get us to the finish line. Following 5 firms were contracted in 2015 and continue to do a wonderful job with us, a staff extension that you've heard from my other colleagues that have been up here. So we have GCI, CMI, CMTS, KMI, and NV5. We have other firms partnered up and rolled up under them as well. So for item Quebec, fee's been negotiated with CMI. It's the first part of their contract for a total amount of a little over $1 million for FY 2022 services. Basically, it's project management, change management, and cost estimating. And we're going to run them from October 1st of this year through March 31st of next year, and then see where we're at with the dollars after that. Again, small business participation due to the specialized nature of the required services. CMI doesn't propose any on this particular addendum. However, their participation to date for MWB and LDB is listed in front of you. Fiscal impact is a little over $1 million. And again, it's all within the South Terminal C Phase 1 budget. Recommended action for item Quebec is in front of you. Happy to take any questions on this one.
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
Weishire, move approval.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, the ayes have it. Motion passes. Next item.
Thanks, sir. Item Romeo, a fee has been negotiated with CMI again for a total amount of $1.8 million, a little bit of change for FY 2022, technology, consulting, and support services. This is Han Integrated as a primary sub, working on my team as well as Mr. Pelletier's team that you just heard from for IT to complete all the approximately 70 different systems of the South Terminal. Some of those, just to touch on a few, are the EME, which is the Experiential Media Environment, VRC, Virtual Ramp Control, our building management systems, all the low voltage for computers, phones, wireless access points, all that low voltage stuff. The PON, Passive Optical Network, is all the fiber backbone that we do. For small business, due to the specialized nature of this service, CMI doesn't propose any on this particular addendum. However, their participation up to date for MWB and LDB is in front of you. Fiscal impact is $1.8 million, a little bit of change. Again, all within the South Terminal C Phase 1 budget right now. Recommended action for item Romeo is in front of you. Happy to take any questions on this.
Any questions? We have a motion.
Motion moved.
Moved, seconded.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All Opposed? The ayes have it, motion passes. Next item, Mr. Umaki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item Sierra, fee has been negotiated with CMTS for a total amount of $511,000 and a little bit of change for FY 2022 construction phase services, project management, mostly safety. This group helped us navigate all the site COVID aspects before the rest of the world did. And that kept us mission critical, kept the job going. We have roughly 11.5 million hours worked, all entities, all in for the entire South Terminal. Our safety program is used as the gold standard with FM Global, as our insurance carrier, and Mitigate in the insurance industry worldwide. So we're very proud of that. And the team is doing one heck of a great job on that. Moving on to the small business part, due to the specialized scope of this service, CMTS doesn't have any small business participation on this addendum. And because they themselves are certified, we can't count the self-certification. Fiscal impact is $511,000, again, all within the South Terminal C Phase 1 budget. Recommended action for item Sierra is in front of you. Happy to take any questions on this.
Any questions? Motion?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion passes. Next, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item Tango, fee has been negotiated with NV5, which is formerly Page 1, for a total amount of $1.3 million and a little bit of change for FY 2022 construction phase OER QA/QC services. The primary mission of this group is their personnel is quality assurance, quality control, testing and inspections of the work. Again, they're also doing a great job and help us with the city's building department to make sure we're in complete compliance with Florida building codes, Florida statutes, as everything else applies. And then, again, so that we turn over a quality product to operations and maintenance. On the small business side, MV5 proposes, in this case, 29% DBE participation, and they also have up-to-date MWBE and LDB participation in front of you. Fiscal impact is $1.3 million and a little bit of change, again, all within the current South Terminal C budget. Recommended action for item Tango is in front of you. Happy to take any questions.
Questions? Any motion?
Move to approve?
Moved and seconded.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion passes. Next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item uniform. Again, back to our report. In this report, you also have an FF&E and IT update status in there each month. Sometimes it lags because of the data compilation, but again, it's owner procured furniture, fixtures, and equipment, as well as IT components, information technology. Huge shout out to Mr. Pelletier's team, Han Integrated, Diane with Kathleen Sharman's group. Couldn't do the job without them. So we have 750 line items. We're about roughly 64% bought out on FF&E, and we're holding at about 90%. That's a good place to be at this stage of the game for getting the project done. By way of background, items brought to the Aviation Authority Board for approval have to happen when the threshold for the purchases are greater than $250,000, or when the procurement method changes to a more restrictive method. The originally specified interior waste receptacles by Peter Pepper, specified for the South Terminal, have been replaced with Audubon 21 waste receptacles. This specification change aligns with the City of Orlando's waste reduction goals and the authority's sustainability management plan. The original methods of procurement for the specified receptacles were established as compete or other entity contract, which is the piggybacking. However, the new Audubon 21 receptacles are only available via sole source procurement method. The sole source procurement request SS00147 dated June 25th of this year for the interior waste receptacles from Deep Stream Designs, Inc. was approved by the CEO, Mr. Brown, on July 7th of this year. The method of procurement for the interior waste receptacles is changed from compete to sole source. The purchase amount of these items will be for a total not to exceed amount of $575,000, a little bit of change. The cost for the purchase of interior waste receptacles is greater than $250,000, and we changed the procurement method to a more stricter methodology, thus approval by the board is required. Here's information that we're tracking our participation through the small business, through our procurement group. Fiscal impact is $575,000 and change, and again, it's all within the South Terminal C Phase 1 budget. Happy to take any questions on item uniform with the recommended action before you.
Any questions? Mr. Ortiz? No questions.
No, I make the motion to approve.
We have a
though.
motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving on to item Victor. Again, we have in the brand new terminal 10 screening lanes at the TSA checkpoint. 8 of these are what we call ASLs, automated screening lanes. It's to be furnished and installed by Vonderlande Industries. They're doing the entire 7-mile system and early bag storage for the main terminal. Makes a lot of sense. On August 18th of this year, the board approved an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with the TSA. In there is respective obligations of the Aviation Authority and TSA. ASLs will actually improve the operational efficiencies and decrease wait time at those checkpoints, at that checkpoint. The MOU also provides the authority will provide acceptance testing in accordance with the approved testing plans and procedures at the federal level with site acceptance testing, operational readiness testing, and integrated site acceptance testing. This is routine and normal third-party testing with a TSA across the entire United States. Charlotte Airport just went through this as well. So I believe, I'll turn it over to Dan in a second, but the MOU requires that the authority directly procure acceptance testing with a TSA-approved firm. Right now, that's Battelle. Sole source procurement request SS00148 dated August 2nd of this year for security screening and acceptance testing services from Battelle was approved by Mr. Brown on August 13th of this year for a total amount of $358,000, a little bit of change. Mr. Gerber, you want to talk about some of the fun we've been having with Battelle?
Sure. Many years ago, the Florida Supreme Court changed sovereign immunity when a government agency adopted contractual indemnity for one of its vendors. And when Mr. Marchena was general counsel, he established a precedent of advising the board when we had contractual indemnity in place that could go above the limits of sovereign immunity. In this contract, Battelle is the only provider that TSA has authorized. We must use them. And this is a time-critical, mission-critical function that has to be done on a timely basis now. Battelle provided us with a bold contract with indemnity in its favor. I will say that over the past several weeks, Battelle and the Aviation Authority have negotiated hard in good faith and reached a resolution which we find acceptable, which mitigates the Aviation Authority's risk reasonably. In this resolution, Battelle has insurance for the first $1 million of its liability. For example, if it hits the side of one of our buildings or something like that when it's doing its work. And then GOAA procured at no cost a $5 million additional insured provision for Battelle. I want to thank especially risk management at GOAA. This was, they really saved this deal by procuring that additional $5 million. Given these two insurance policies in place and the contractual indemnity provision that we've reached, it's our opinion that this protects the Aviation Authority against foreseeable and ordinary risks. Thank you.
So TSA requires this. We got no choice. And they only give us one vendor we can use.
Yes.
How does that happen?
Well, let me also say TSA has
Welcome to
been.
my world, Chairman.
That's a good question, Mr. Chairman.
So you gotta wonder here.
I do want to say, you know, TSA also has been very open to this, to understanding this issue for us. They are also constrained by their regulatory issues as well. This may change at some point.
If I can add, I'll tell you what I know. So we've been using Battelle here for a long time on the North Terminal baggage optimization, no problems whatsoever. Right, so precedent's been set. I've heard through the grapevine, and I know there's an active solicitation at Homeland Security TSA. They're looking at other companies like Raytheon, Leidos, and some others in the future. There's like 3 or 4 that I've seen. So I think they are opening up to more competition other than just Battelle. But again, Vanderlande goes and puts the equipment in, fires it up per factory requirements and specifications. Battelle comes in, plugs it in their computer, and just makes sure it's operating correctly, and they give a report to the TSA. That's all they do.
What
It's
can
that
we do
simple.
what can we do to engender more competition, to the chairman's question? Is there anything we can do? That's what we can do.
It's a federal
It's
level.
a regulatory issue with TSA.
I
Write your
understand.
congressman.
Yeah,
But I think what Mr. Ramaki is saying is that TSA is amenable to getting more competition in terms of services provided rather than going to one vendor. They've had the same issue parenthetically with pre-check. For years, they've only had one vendor that offers pre-check services. In November, they're opening that up. And so they have recognized the need for competition. This particular instance was really by virtue of the indemnification provisions that were in the agreement, and Battelle has the upper hand. And so Ms. Cotman in risk management, Mr. Gerber, David Willison on his team, Mr. Ramaki, all worked pretty hard to figure out a way to skin the cat.
Did a great job doing that. I understand it was not easy.
So we appreciate that. And the
Do we have any
first-
more questions?
I just have two.
Yes, sir.
Two. What potential liability could we be indemnifying for, testing company anyways?
What
What's the-
potential liability?
Battelle's performance here is really tight, and it's all supervised by TSA. So there could be some extraordinary unforeseen liability. I just don't like indemnity provisions where I'm indemnifying someone for their own negligence. And so what I was most concerned about was hitting a passenger boarding bridge with a truck. And I think this covers those sort of risks.
Okay. And then the second one was, how did we get the additional insurance at no cost?
I'm going to leave that to Ms. Kopman's brain power, but she did a great job. And I also, and I'll find that out for you, but I also want to thank our insurance stack, because this was a real partnership by them too. But I'll get that answer for you on how, Mayor.
Well, seems like pretty good work to me.
Great work.
Yes.
If I could just add on a couple more things. So we have our first 5 ASLs worked out with the TSA. They'll be here in about 3 weeks. So we really appreciate, Dan, like Mr. Brown said, everybody's help just getting this thing done. So really appreciate that. If I can just finish this up.
Please.
Small business, looks like small business got wiped out. So anyway, the fiscal action, the fiscal impact is $358,000, all within the current South Terminal C budget, and the recommended action for item Victor is in front of you. Happy to take any more questions.
Any other questions? A motion?
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board, everybody, good robust discussion. Items Whiskey through Zulu, the final ones for me. On our owner authorized reps, on March 15th, 2017, the board approved continuing program project management services with these 5 firms: A Squared, AECOM, GCI, PSA, and WSP. Again, by way of background, OARs, owner authorized reps, assist us with everything required to gear up projects, help us run them, and close them out with everything needed that goes with this. So for the entire life cycle, grant compliance, all those kind of things. So they really are staff extension. Each of these new business items presented in the board today have individual memos in your board agenda package. For item Whiskey, this is for AECOM. This is for the tenant concessions projects. Arlene Grant is the manager of that group, and this is for all North Terminal as well as South Terminal concessions. So her small team keeps up with all that. So this is for the next fiscal year. Item X-ray is for GCI. It's for small construction projects. We have what we call EVH jobs, electrical, vertical, horizontal projects. This small team deals with that as value added on top of everything else with their work responsibilities. Item Yankee is PSA management. They do security infrastructure technology oversight. Basically, this staff is split between myself and Mr. Gilliam's department, and they help us out with the whole master plan of security-related infrastructure. It's highly specialized. PSA is a MWB and LDB certified small business, but again, self-performance doesn't count. So, and then the last one is Zulu, that's WSP. They've been helping us out with the Brightline rail oversight for OARs for the entire time, and helping us out with logistics and coordination with Brightline with their 3 segments on our property. And the recommended action is before you for Whiskey through Zulu. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? Do I hear a motion?
I'll move W.
Moved.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Next item, X.
Hit all of them. You want me to recap? So I hit every one of those. X-ray is the GCI one for small construction projects.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item Y. Motion
Motion to approve.
moved, seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Z. Motion? Moved, seconded. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Mr. Remark, before you go, Chairman, if you'll allow me, I just want to say, not only, well, great job on your marathon today first of all.
Thank you.
But I do want to say thank you. You spent quite a bit of time with me walking through the entire scale and scope of the program, everything that you're overseeing. I not only enjoyed and appreciated the time we spent together, but also the expertise that you lent to the conversation, answering my questions and understanding more about the project that's being worked through. And then also I want to recognize your attention not only to detail, but also the budget and the concerns that will be raised by this authority board and working through that. And I just have the utmost respect for what you're doing and how you're managing the size, scale, scope, and the importance of this program. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity to say thank you.
I appreciate that, sir. I represent the team, so thank you. On behalf of Mr. Brown and everybody else, so thank you. It's
sir.
really the team.
Dr. Hogue?
Yeah, great comments, Tim. Thank you. Look, this presentation is just Herculean in scope, and appreciate it. I just want to ask you just a very candid question. What's keeping you up at night? Is there anything we can do to help you? I mean, this is so vast.
So the unknown factor for us is anything that comes out of DC right now, or any kind of black swan events, as we've had some professionals come in and help us out. That's what worries me, especially with my background. It's what we don't know. So as we take you through the terminal, if y'all can think of anything else that we're missing or, critical, because I've had a lot of eyes and ears on this thing. So whatever you all think of or what you're hearing in the community, if there's something out there, well, I say, please don't be bashful, hit us with it. You're not gonna hurt our feelings. I always tell people I don't have any feelings anymore. So, I mean, seriously, we're gonna accomplish the mission. So that's the issue, is the black swan is the answer to your
I
question.
get it, yeah.
The unknown,
Fair
unknown.
enough.
Unknown.
By the way, I did learn that as well. You don't have any feelings. No, I'm kidding.
Get a bad rap.
They are deep down.
Thank you very much.
Right, so we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Help
Can
them
we be
because
seated, please?
the premise was trying to get people, Sunrail riders.
100%. And look, I'm all in on that.
Sit down, Kaser.
I think that's, you know, we're gonna fight. We love to do that.
This afternoon, I would like to present for your consideration items AA, BB, CC, D. First two are AA and BB refer to the same contractor, which is Answer Advisory Consulting, formerly RW Block. They were acquired by Answer Advisory Consulting Services and have gone through a name change. We have competed this service over the years, and they provide some very crucial services for both the construction and engineering department and the finance department. The services provided are enumerated on the screen, but let me point out a couple. It's the review of the construction contracts, change orders for eligibility of funding, state, federal, passenger facility charges. You know, we talk a lot about the color of money, or the different sources of money. All of them have separate restrictions. And so when we put together a program, we use all sources of those monies, and we use them in pay applications, change orders. So we spend a great deal of effort using Answer Advisory to help us parse through and make sure that everything is aligned in conformance and in compliance with all the regulatory restrictions. That's not something that you're necessarily going to see in a city government, a school district, or a general purpose government, but it is certainly the case with regard to capital funding that we have. So if it seems like we've got an inordinate amount of oversight on this, you're right, we do. And Answer Advisory Services provide those services. The two contracts today, and these are actually addenda for the same contract, that Answer is, we're seeking approval for, are $382,000 for the support for the construction finance, construction and engineering department and their aspects of overseeing the capital program. This is not only a South Terminal, but the entire capital program. So this is for an annual basis, starting fiscal year beginning this coming October 1st. The same for the compliance program for the finance department. The difference is that in the finance department, Answer has a MWBE contractor that's providing these services. So that's why you see the differential in participation on these contracts. So the recommended action is on the screen before you. I won't belabor it, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? No questions?
I'll move AA.
Move for AA, second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion passes. Item BB,
Move to approve.
A second with brief comment.
what's that?
I would second with a brief comment. You good?
Yes.
Just thank you, Mr. Brown. We spent some time talking through these items and answering questions, and you alluded to it at the very beginning how each entity that we might be working with has a different insight and a different look that's required, and so I appreciate you spending the time with me to work through these two agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's all a day's work, sir.
Yes, sir.
It was a whole day. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, motion passes. Item CC, Mr. Brown.
Item CC is the renewal of our health insurance program. We have a fully insured health insurance program that covers medical, dental, vision, Medicare, supplemental, prescription drugs, life insurance, and long-term disability. We also have some optional life insurance that's employee paid, and we also have short-term disability advisement, which is on a self-insured basis, and an administration of our flexible spending account. So we have a variety of plans that are available to employees. You've seen most of them in your businesses, whether it's a health savings account, whether it's an HMO or a POS, which basically is a provider program that you're able to select providers and the services from them. We have, in terms of the employees, we have covered under this, and I'm searching from memory, but I think, Mr. Weishauer, you got the details on it. I think we have a little under 800 individuals currently covered under the program. And the bulk of those individuals are in the the preferred provider or the preferred provider plus. Very few are in the HSA or the HMO. And why that's important is the preferred providers are usually the more expensive programs. They allow more flexibility for employees. So employees that want to select their physicians, if they're in the network, there's an in-network, out-of-network provision for that. It costs more to go out-of-network. But the ones that focus on the savings, and they're typically used by the healthier folks or the HMOs and the HSA. The HSA, health savings accounts, are higher deductible. So that's less expensive. And many of you know that from your businesses or your encounters with business. So right now, we're fully insured. Every year, we look at whether or not it makes sense for us to go to a self-insurance basis. I know Ms. Kierkegaard has pointed out that City of Kissimmee is self-insured. When I was at Orange County 100 years ago, that was self-insured for both medical benefits as well as other insurance programs. For us, it's an evaluation that typically focuses on the volume. When we also have an employee census, the employees here, we have a lot of employees that work here for a long time. So they're typically a little bit older, and sometimes they have medical issues. And so I'm a prime example of that. I've had 2 hips replaced since I've been your CEO. And there are others that have similar situations. So having taken that into account, we go out and negotiate every year with our provider, or we go out to the market. Several years ago, about 3 years ago, we went out and we had United Healthcare and we got Cigna. And Cigna got the business because they were cost effective and they also gave us a credit. Basically, if you want to think of it as a signing bonus, we got a signing bonus, so we got a credit. Now, that was a 1-year credit. In the subsequent years, we had to go back to where the normal rates were. We have a cost-sharing arrangement with our employees. So employee only is 10 to 15%, depending, again, on what type of plan you're enrolled in. Enrollment covers the period January 1 through December 31st. So once we go through this, there will be an enrollment period. We will go out to employees and they'll make selections of what kinds of services they want. And they also have an opt-out provision, which is required. So we also have retirees. Prior to September 30th of 2006, the end of our fiscal year that year, there was a cost-sharing arrangement for retirees. So if you served 10 years in good standing, or 15 years, or 20 years, you had a progressively increasing portion of your retiree medical paid by the authority. That ceased in 2006 because it was not going to be cost effective. So that level was 50% at 10 years, 75% at 15 years, and at 20 years it was 100%. So we have employees that have had the advantage of that. We fund that through a OPEB, Other Post-Employment Benefits Trust Fund, that we set up a number of years ago. So that's put that on an actuarial basis to make sure that the program has enough funds in it to cover the actuarial anticipated medical costs for that group. So all the retirees pay 100% of premium for dependents. And if you were hired after September 30th, 2006, those retirees pay 100% of premiums. I'm the only exception to that. I negotiated that in the contract, so everybody understands, full disclosure. So, again, I've already covered the opt-out. So the bottom line is that we've been able to negotiate with the assistance of our consultant, McGriff Insurance, a 7.42% increase in the medical premiums. That's based on what we see in the market. That's a reasonable level of increase. So the total premium you see on the right-hand column on the slide behind me, the dental was 3.14%, and we didn't have any increases in premiums for vision or the medical retirees, medical and prescription plans. So the total premium for medical, dental, and vision is to $21,032,802. For other coverages, life insurance, long-term disability, short-term disability advisement, and the flexible spending account administration, it's a little less than $500,000. So all told, we're at a little over $21.5 million in terms of the premium. And it's been pointed out by both Mr. Kierkegaard and Mr. Weishauer, there's probably some things that we can look at going forward to anticipate increases in medical coverage, because it's not going to get any less expensive than it is now. So those are things that we have on the radar that we will have to continue to look at. But we also have a program that has served us well in terms of retaining employees. So we keep that, particularly in this labor environment, we keep that in mind as well. So there are two things that we're looking at that are different than the way we've proceeded. Last year, if you recall, and a few of you were on the board, I asked the board to absorb the increase in cost for the employees for last year, because that was the year that we no longer had the benefit of the signing bonus credit, and the increase would have been an inordinate amount, in my view, for employees, particularly in light of the fact that last year they had no compensation adjustment. We were coming out of COVID. We didn't know exactly what the situation was, and we didn't make any adjustments because frankly, I was not pressing enough to know whether or not we're going to have to lay people off involuntarily or not. But in order to get back to those conventional or traditional levels, rather than put the full impact back in 1 year, we're asking for the board to agree to let us recover it over a 3-year period. This one would be the 1/3 installment for this year, and the 2 subsequent years coming, we would recovering back to the standard or the traditional cost-sharing arrangement between employee and employer. The other thing we're asking is that under the health savings account, there's a contribution that's available for the authority to make to employees. Currently, it's $750. We would recommend that we go to $1,000 for employee only and $2,000 from $1,500 for families. We have 19 active participants in the HSA. We think that we can at least start to move the needle by giving them some more incentive. These are funds that are deposited for their benefit. They get to spend them in the way they see fit. So the fiscal impact of this is on the screen before you. And the recommendations, this is the fiscal impact. It's about $24,000 for the increase in HSA. I've already gone through the premium. It's about a $1.3 million increase overall from the premiums we paid last year when you do the calculation throughout all the plans. And so this is the detailed recommendation that we have with respect to the health insurance renewals. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, I move approval.
One question. Mr. Chairman, can you characterize the esprit of the employees from this? I mean, how is the impasse is being received by employees?
In terms of the medical, I think they're always happy that they don't have to pay a whole lot of increase. They recognize that that the costs are increasing. We've been able to manage through COVID and prior to COVID without any change in the cost sharing, and we've been able to maintain the level of benefits. So, I mean, I don't get out as much as I used to, but my sense is that they're appreciative of the program that we have.
Use the word esprit.
Esprit.
Craig, he's using that fancy University of Florida English
I'll
degree
second.
again.
Yeah, I
He's
don't
trying to
get
show
all
it off.
that. I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Thank you very much, Dr. Evans. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
This next item, double D, is something that is probably unusual for us, but after a lot of work and talk and discussion, not only at the staff level, but with our ACDBEs in particular and concessionaires, we're bringing to you an item to establish a grant fund. So most of you are aware that in mid-March, the world changed for us. March 18th, as I recall, a Friday afternoon, Disney said we're closing the parks. And then what you saw was this. Traffic from March to April took a nosedive. Started to recover, and for that period, almost a year, almost precisely a year, we were clawing back with traffic. This were employments. When you look at the concession sales, it's the same trend. If you break the concessions down between food and beverage, retail, the same trend. To put that in a little different perspective, if you compare the fiscal year, which is not precisely the same period you saw on the previous charts, but it's the 12-month period ending September 30th for both 2019 and 2020, food and beverage sales dropped 43%. News, gift, retail declined 48%. So everybody suffered from that to some extent. But there were many of our ACDBs, and we have 24 separate individuals that operate a couple of different, many operate more than one concept, but there are 24 ACDB companies that do business with the Aviation Authority. That's a combination of retail and food and beverage. So we have some that are participating in joint ventures. It's become the norm, frankly, throughout the country for how ACDBs participate in concessions. I was on a call several weeks ago with FAA's Office of Civil Rights in which they had a roundtable, and they indicated about 85% of the ACDBs nationwide participate in joint ventures. Because what you have is you have the expertise and you have the capital that you can join in a joint venture. But understand that ACDBs, in order to be qualified as ACDBs, have to make a capital contribution of their own into any business operation. So as an example, if you have a concession that you're a 30% operator and it has a capital requirement, you have to put 30% of the capital in. And there are really three ways that a small business, because there are size limitations to be certified as ACDB, there are personal net worth limitations as well for the individual owners. They have to be owned, managed, and controlled by a socioeconomic disadvantaged individual or group of individuals. So they have to come up with the capital either out of their own funds, which for small businesses is probably pretty much a challenge. They can take loans from their prime partner if they're in a joint venture. If it's the same commercial terms that are available to anybody else, they can't get any sweet deals. They obviously don't want to take any adverse deals. Or they can borrow on their own. So in many instances, in order to meet those capital commitments, and they can range in some of the ACDBs we have from $150,000 up to almost $1 million. So over the term of their concession, they have to amortize that capital. And that's what we've been focusing on, because that has been the major issue that we've heard, particularly from the ACDBs. We've had meetings with them, and we've tried to figure out how to best address some of these issues, because they're small businesses. Many of the ACDBs are local. Not every one of them are. We have one ACDB that's certified in Louisiana that operates as a joint venture partner in a news gift. But then we have several that operate here that are Orlando, Orange County natives that work here. So what we have tried to come up with is an approach to do a targeted, meaningful, provide targeted and meaningful relief to assist those companies that were adversely impacted. In the board memorandum, I used the term significant reduction. And I did that, but one of the things that we'll have to figure out if the board proceeds with this is what exactly that means. And that really leads to the issue of what we have to establish. We need to come up with a criteria, and we need to do that in such a way as that it's meaningful. But frankly, it also has to protect the interests of the Aviation Authority. This is not intended to be a giveaway program. It's intended to be a process which has rigor, has requirements, has accountability, that when we make these investments and help these people, that they can recover and continue. One of the issues that we run into, which is one that has been challenging for us, is that an easy, and I use that in quotation marks, I do air quotes on that one, okay? An easy way to do that is extend the concession. Well, you can't extend a JV minority partner and not extend the JV majority partner. And we have a configuration, frankly, in a number of concessions that have long periods. I mean, we have concessionaires that have terms up to 2024. One of the things that we've noted in going through the procurements in the South is that passenger tastes are always changing. And we think that it's in the interest of the authority to be in a position to reconfigure how those concessions look in the north. And by granting any further extensions, you're going to inhibit your ability to do that beyond what we believe is reasonable. So part of what we're trying to accomplish is, number one, have some targeted relief for ACDBs that need the money. And I'm not sure that everybody needs it. We have some standalones that have operations off the airport. So one of the things that we have to come back up with to you, and the proposal is we set up the authorization for an amount not to exceed $2 million, but we need to bring back to you eligibility criteria, requirements for awards, allowable relief from other resources. There are other resources that are available to some of these companies. Most notable is PPP. And when we got into the issues with FAA and looking how they expected the relief to be administered on a couple of their programs, they would, they wouldn't count it against an ACDB or a concession if they'd taken a PPP loan first draw, which is the one for payroll. But if you took one for rent, why would you need relief otherwise? There are other things, there are other avenues, SBA loans, other things. So what we need to be able to do is require the information, evaluate it, but we also are going to need to have some financial experts, and we have 2 small business accounting firms on contract that assist the internal audit department that audit concessions on a frequent basis. They will allow us to review that. We need to figure out maximum award amounts. And so what we've targeted, and the reason I went back and looked at that upswing, that period, is we think that where we need to focus is that period, April 1 of 2020 to April 1 of 2021, which is basically a year in which we suffered the most decline in traffic. That's where we ought to focus. So whatever relief we come up with, it shouldn't exceed beyond those bounds. And what we're looking at is a way to help the ACDBs address the issue of amortizing their investment, but not doing it with an extension, which extends the term, which gets into a number of issues that we think become problematic for us. And we need contractual obligations from these grantees. We need the ability to go in and audit them. We need to know where they're spending the money, seeing how they're going to address that, to make sure that they're going to continue to be a going concern, and frankly, that it's spent in a worthwhile purpose. So that's what we think that we need to do in order to make this program work. So what we have is the other thing that we think is going to be key, because we're going to need to sit down and consult with the ACDBs to come up with this, because I can sit down for a couple of days and come up with the program, but it's not necessarily going to work. You've got business people out there. We've met with all these business operators from one time or another. They have some idea. They can give us feedback. Does this help you? Does this not help you? Is this worthwhile from your standpoint? So that's all going to need to, in my view, take place over the next month, presuming that you approve this. I think by the reason that I'm asking for you to approve an amount now is because it's easy for us to go out and talk, but if these folks know that the board is committed to providing them some relief and there's tangible action that's already taken, I think it's going to be much better for us to have a meaningful dialogue and get meaningful input from them. Having said that, we're recommending that we establish a no contact period for the board. Okay, that means that we're going to follow essentially what we do for our communications policy for any other RFP. You approve this today, no contact period goes down. Anybody that's affected by this, anybody that wants to talk to you about this, they can't do that. We're going to have consulting, we're going to get input from the ACDBs. If they have issues and they want to talk to you, we have a sunshine meeting next October that everybody can come in and they can state their case and everybody can hear what everybody else has to say on the matter. So we're not saying that you can't have any input, you can't hear from them. All we're saying is we want an even playing field for everybody involved.
Does the cone of silence include the partnering entity or the entities that they're partnered with? So,
Anybody, anything that wants to talk, anybody that wants to talk about this that has some interest in it.
okay.
Questions?
So,
Mr. Chairman? Hold on. Are you
The,
finished up before you open it for questions?
You have a
Feel free to
question?
chime in with questions as well, Mayor.
okay, I'm happy to take questions. I got one more point to make, but then I can always make that.
Go ahead and make that point.
Program management, you see the program management on the screen there. So what we would also propose is that we're going to have legal counsel involved. We need to have, they've already started work on an application, which is pretty rigorous. We're going to have outside accounting firms. We would pay the cost from this $2 million if you approve it. So it all becomes encapsulated in that. And one point about the $2 million. The funding that we're looking at is from our discretionary revenues. And the reason I make that point is that operating budgets, by and large, are funded out of user fees. At the end of the year, if we have revenues in excess of expenditures, we share a portion of that with airlines, and we keep a portion of that in our discretionary funds. So these are funds that we've already have in place. The other issue is that we are in the process of preparing an application to FAA. Under the ARPA, which was passed March 11th of this year, FAA's come down with some guidance. They're working on more guidance, but there's $21 million for concession relief that they've allocated to this airport. This is not additional money. This is reimbursement for relief that this board has already provided. So we will have cash flow coming back in to the authority for the relief that we've already had. So from a cash flow standpoint, a cash standpoint, we're not using airline money. We're not using other concession money. We're not using rent-a-car money. What we're using is our portion of the surplus from prior years. So what? We need a targeted program for ACD concession operators with a demonstrated need. How we're going to do that? It's a rigorous application process with monitoring of expenditures and accountability for grantees and funding from the Aviation Authority's discretionary funds. And why? To assist ACB's recovery without extending concession terms. Happy to take any questions.
Mr. Mateer?
I think Mr.
Mayor?
This is an area that certainly is of significant interest to me. Several months ago, when many of the ACDBs were in, I want to say, crisis, when the air passenger travel had not really returned, several reached out to me, and I had conversations with the director, the CEO, as well as my chief of staff, Roseanne Harrington. I had a meeting with some of them, and they expressed, a number of issues, and I'm glad to see this coming forward at this time, because what it really demonstrates is that the Aviation Authority listened to them. In many ways, they're partners here with the authority to make certain that the airport provides the kind of amenities and services that the travelers want to see. And we have this mutual goal of ensuring that this has to be a transparent process between everyone, that it's good business for the airport to keep them in business, and it's good business for them to also stay in business. So I do support moving forward in the manner that the executive director or the CEO has brought forward today. So I support it and would like to make a motion for approval.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Continuing discussion, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a couple comments. I think it's very important that, that we do, help. I think that when you look at it, the larger vendors have a lot of control over the smaller vendors, and that as we move forward, there needs to be a way to look at that and how do we decouple that to have protection when things like this happen. I also think it's important that we open our concessions now for the customers that we have, and that we require, I know a lot of the ACDBs are open, some of the others aren't, and I think that's an important component for the service of the airport and the quality of the airport. And so, the traffic's back. International has a few challenges, but I'd like staff to kind of take a look at, they had a conversation when I brought it up last time. Everyone was supposed to open September 1st. I'd like to know who opens September 1st. I'd like to know, what their hours are, and are we fulfilling our promises and our contractual obligations? And if not, we should put some people on notice. And I would say on the bigger side of things, and I think zeroing in on these ACDPs and making sure that we target them and that their larger partners are taking care of them, because that was part of what we looked at. So,
Mr. Mateer did ask for a report back at this meeting on who is open on September 1st. Do we have that report from staff, by the way?
well, I'm asked for it now. I was just more, I said they have to be open, and I think that's where the
But
September 1st
I would like to
came
have
from.
a report soon.
I can
on-
tell you.
Complied.
I mean, it wouldn't be hard to do, how many hours a day, how many, who's open.
It's hours of operations, are you operating? And again, I don't know that we can get into the depth of what did you do for your ACDBE, but, we as a board need to figure out how to handle that moving forward in some of the contracts that we do, so.
Well, I think that question will be answered in their conversations with them directly when they're
Well,
doing
they
that
may not
assessment
answer how
hard.
often they're
It's-
open.
It's hard when you're a smaller vendor and you've got a big partner above you. I mean, they have power that is difficult to deal with. And I think, making it transparent, as Phil's trying to do, or doing some of those things, those are important, because it's hard to go in the room and say, hey, they're really not taking care of me. And those are things that I think we need to at least have something to be able to pull out and say, hey, we need to verify that, or we need to see what that does, and make sure that that's happening.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to the difficulty to get employees, but I'm with Mayor Demings at times that I'm not. It is amazing that certain, like Zaza and Ruben Perez, that didn't close at all, they got their butt up in the morning, they came in here, when there was nobody here in the airport, they were serving coffee fast, and there they worked, and I, appreciate that. It says somehow some businesses manage to find employees, and I'm not sure I completely buy into the difficulty of finding employees. I think that's certainly a difficulty, but I on that note, as Mr. Brown and I have discussed, we want to take care of those that have had a difficult time, but we also want to appreciate those that have really fought and endured and as a result, their sales haven't dropped as much. So that's something that y'all have to look at and measure. Do we have more questions?
Yeah, I have a number of comments. So first of all, any comment or concern I probably would have raised, Mr. Brown, you addressed in your presentation, and I appreciate that. The first one, Board, I would just point out is just making sure we're cognizant of precedent. We recognize that what happened last year is unheard of, unseen, and unfathomable in a lot of ways. And so the unique nature of what our concessionaires dealt with last year is something that we all hope we never see again. So it does create this very unique opportunity. We know we operate in a free market, free enterprise, risk-reward system whereby you get to enjoy all the profits and the good times. That also means you have to deal with some of the negatives and the downtimes. However, I am cognizant of the very unique circumstance that happened, and I appreciated your framework on the the time that you're laying out from year to year so that there's a really good comparison. I think the other 2 points that I would probably make, because you did an outstanding job of dealing with any concerns that I would have raised, and the 2 words I would use would be rigor and fidelity. And you touched both of those, and you mentioned rigor a number of times. Want to make sure that the program is designed in such a way that people aren't taking advantage of multiple levels of benefits or opportunities that were out there, and that this truly is targeted to make sure it's dealing with those that actually can absolutely manifestly display a real need for this grant program and for this funding. Mr. Mateer, what you touched on is something I would have mentioned as well, is the distinction that takes place between the large concessionaires and the smallers, and kind of the decoupling and providing a mechanism whereby staff can work through that. And then the last thing would be, this is in its conceptual form. And so working through that and building out the right plan so that the authority board has the comfort that the implementation of this is done in such a way that it's actually truly making a difference and making sure that it aligns with the overall business interest and business plan of the authority board and where it is we want to go as an aviation authority. So with that, I recognize that there's still work to be laid out. Mr. Brown, again, I'm going to commend you because I think you did a very good job of talking through things that I would have brought up as concerns, and of course, council and I had some conversations about as well. So I stand in support of moving forward with this, and I look forward to seeing the full breadth of what will be built to make sure that the 2 things that I touched on are there. Number 1, rigor, and number 2, fidelity.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? I noticed that, I know a lot of these tenants have been asking for extensions beyond 2024 rather than the sort of cash things. I'm going to address my thoughts to that, which Mr. Brown did a nice job at the comments when we get to the end. So I think that's I'd like to make an interesting point on that. Do we have a motion and we have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
All right, Mr. Chairman, not last, but certainly not least, we have Ms. Sharman back up for a presentation on the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayors, members of the board. I'm here to present the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority's fiscal 21-22 budget for your consideration today. This is the final step in our budget process that you were briefed on in more detail last month. So as a reminder, our budget objective is, this budget focuses on the past, on recovering from the past, and looks to our exciting future as we add our resources back to accommodate the expected growth in passengers. Our objective is to continue to operate the terminal safely and securely, following Health Department, CDC, FAA guidelines, funding resources to support that anticipated return in passenger traffic, and to provide world-class customer service, the Orlando experience, as we open the new South Terminal C in the spring of 2022.
Hear, hear.
Doing all that, while we continue to keep our rates as reasonable as possible and still meet the financial obligations of authority. Quite a balancing act. Since the presentation of the preliminary budget last month, as required by statute, a public hearing was held September 13th, 2021 at the Orlando City Council meeting. It was attended by Chairman Good, as well as our CEO, Mr. Brown, and myself. I made a brief presentation. We answered several questions from the commissioners. There was no comments from the public received at the meeting, and so therefore there are no changes to the preliminary budget with respect to our final budget. So just a brief summary. This year's budget is proposed $578.4 million in total revenue and $377.5 million in operating expenses. Airline rates and charges, which is the blue piece of the pie up here, it's about 41% of our budget, or $233 million, leaving nearly 60% of our revenues coming from non-aeronautical sources, the largest of which is our rental cars at $93 million, or 16%, followed by parking and ground transportation at $60 million, or 11%, and concessions at $58 million, or 10%. With respect to expenses, the largest percentage of our budget is maintenance and janitorial. They're combined at 27%, and we focus on keeping our terminal clean, safe, secure, and in a state of good repair. Followed then by personnel expenses at 25%, and contracts and professional services between 13 and 15%.
Where's debt service in that?
Debt service is coming up right here.
No, but in the pie before that.
Oh,
is
in the pie
percentage.
before that, it's not here. You got total revenues, here, this chart explains it better. So the total revenues, the 528, which was that revenue pie. The total expenses, 377 in operating, and then we get to our debt service. We're required to have an operating and maintenance reserve in accordance with our bond resolution, and then the debt service here, we have the general airport revenue bonds, which we talked about earlier in the Finance Committee, and the passenger facility bond debt service there. We can offset that by passenger facility revenue. And then we have our new central energy plant charge that is a result of our public partnership with the Orlando Utilities Commission. The OUC is going to maintain our infrastructure, which is very complex, run our central energy plant, and also maintain our 12 kV emergency power distribution center. That's half a year's worth of that payment. And so then you have all your revenues minus your O&M, minus your debt service. You get down to remaining revenues, $76.2 million, which Mr. Brown indicated earlier. We use of that amount, about $15 million is projected to be shared with the airlines under our rate and revenue sharing agreement. We use the remainder of that to fund our capital program, as well as keep our assets in a state of good repair. You have a list there in your packet of the proposed heavy maintenance program that totals about $50 million. And the last thing I would point out on this slide is that this budget provides for adequate debt service coverage ratios. Again, something we talked about a little bit earlier in the Finance Committee. Then this is, if there, I guess, any questions on Orlando International? Any questions?
Just to make sure, the reason that those debt service expenditures don't show up in that pie chart,
This is operating expenses.
that's operating, but it's also a function of the way that our bond covenants work. We have what's called a net revenue pledge. So the way you figure out what your net revenue is, you take your revenues less your expenses, and then that's available. So that.
These are what's available for debt service.
And it's different than some organizations, because the theory is you've got an ongoing asset that you have to maintain that has to generate revenue. So you need to have your maintenance and operations in order to generate the revenue. The debt service comes after that.
Okay, and proceed then to Orlando Executive Airport. And just very briefly, it's a balanced budget. We're using about $1.5 million in revenue from our federal relief, our CARES Act. We're also contributing $1.7 million from fund balance, and that's in large part to fund the $2.3 million in investment that you all approved last month in connection with the Executive Airport CIP, which was to invest in our commercial real estate, which if you take out the CARES money, generates about 70% of our revenue, and that is to get that program, improve that revenue generation at the Executive Airport. So this budget meets, as Mr. Brown said, all the legal financial covenants that were required under our bond resolution, funds the necessary improvement to enhance the revenue generated by commercial properties at the Executive Airport. For Orlando International, it funds staff and services to support the return in passenger traffic to close to 2019 levels, as well as to fund the opening of our South Terminal C, which will provide our customers with a world-class customer experience, which goes beyond the Orlando experience, while keeping rates as low as possible to encourage additional air service that will bring both businesses and leisure travelers back to the region, ultimately creating more business for our non-airport partners, our non-airline partners, and the greater Central Florida community. So therefore, I respectfully request your consideration on the motion as outlined on the screen to approve the $578,380,000 budget for Orlando International Airport and the $6,637,000 budget for Orlando Executive Airport. Happy to take your questions.
Do I have a motion or questions? Motion. Motion, the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Sherman.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, you have FF.
Yes. Item FF is a recommendation to extend Mr. Brown's contract until January 31st, 2022, increase his salary. Mr. Brown continues to be an outstanding leader of the Orlando Aviation Authority, and I think you've been with us for on and off for 15 years, dedicated leadership. He's led the authority to 2 financial crises, plus COVID, one at the start of his tenure and one at the end. He has led through massive increases in air traffic and air service destinations. And Phil has led us to a new era with the conception of the near completion of South Terminal C. We've been very fortunate and blessed to have him in the CEO position. One of his outstanding qualities as a CEO is humility. We've discussed for several months compensation or benefit adjustments, which is consistent with the responsibilities of the position and the way he's excellently executed his responsibilities. The 3% adjustment reflected what he has been insisting on and no more. It's been clear that he will accept nothing more, though I have pushed for it. Further, it has been my hope that Phil would stay longer than January 31st, 2022. It is his desire to move on, however, for whatever's next for him. He has earned that right through tireless and dedicated leadership. By giving us advance notice of intentions to leave on his terms, Phil has put us in a position to have an orderly hiring process for a new CEO. This organization is strong and continues to succeed on a daily basis and forms a great foundation for the next chapter of our leadership. While I hope he can return, at least in short consulting role, to help with our new CEO through transition, I also hope he has plenty of time to enjoy his next adventure. My recommendation is to approve an amendment to Mr. Brown's compensation and employment term as reflected in the board memorandum, effective for the next pay period. Any comments from the board?
Material move?
Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
If I could just note, it's not every day that a Fortune 500 company CEO calls your CEO a legend. So that was a pretty cool moment.
It is a legend.
Yeah. Well, I
You
just
lost a soccer bet.
Oh, whatever.
Let me make a couple comments. I think that's the end of the agenda. One, we will have, we hope to have a new CEO on board in the spring. First comment has to do with the request that I've heard from concessionaires for extensions beyond 2024. I think right now our last concession ends about 2024. I want to be very judicious about any long-term decisions we make. We will have a new CEO sometime in the, hopefully very early spring. We have on this board we have a lot of visionaries on this board with a lot of ideas that are antsy to get great things done. We have a mayor, we have 2 of the most popular mayors perhaps in the state, one that's been with us for 12, 14 years on the airport board, one that came on with me about 3 years ago. We have not 1, but 2, we have 4 new board members that have come on this year, all just raring to go with great ideas. And I would say that this is probably the best board the airport, maybe one of the best boards the airport's ever had. And the new CEO will come in. Hopefully we'll all be excited and it'll have a very strong consensus from all of us. And while I miss Mr. Brown, I'm excited about being able to work with the new CEO to execute the vision of this board and to create some great new ideas that we can all do together. So when I look at And so I want to reserve a lot of decisions, whether it's executive hiring, whether it's extensions to leases, whether it's making any longer decisions until that time. And obviously, I said I want to be judicious. We definitely need to finish the south terminal. That is in itself, every day we're making long-term commitments. There are things that we need to do, of course, that are long-term commitments. But my priorities are finding the very best. The priorities are management, management, management. The three things are making sure that the trains are running on time, the planes are running on time, that we have excellent in operations, Mr. Brown and Mr. Draper. That's the first thing. We can't be stubbing our toe and messing up bathrooms and things. We need to keep that going. We need to focus on the south terminal with Mr. Ramaki and make sure it's done as well as possible, and it's an excellent job. We need to be on the search and the right process for the perfect CEO. We're going to need to think about, right now, Mr. Brown and Mr. Gerber are going to help come up with a emergency program, which we don't have. If Mr. Brown got hit by a bus tomorrow morning, God forbid, we're going to need some emergency measures that surprisingly we don't have. We can't have a new board meeting without a 1-week notice. So we're looking at a succession program that we're going to probably need to put in place for the next CEO in case something happens then. So we've got a lot of planning, and I think we've got a lot of data gathering. We're looking at what we can do with on this UCF program in the state of Florida on manufacturing, and as Mayor Demings made an announcement, bringing in new business. We can be researching, we can be learning, we can be looking, but I'm reluctant to see a lot of long-term commitments, at least unless it's necessary, until we've got that time to really pull together our vision. Those are my thoughts. I'll open it up for any other comments or thoughts from the board.
I have two things, if I can note, and it kind of piggybacks on what you're saying about looking ahead. This airport provides a number of wonderful opportunities to engage our small business community, not only to partner in contracts, but help them grow. 80% of the U.S. economy is driven by small businesses, so it's important that we take a focus on our small business community. And to that end, I was hoping we could do a little, get a presentation. I know this board's gotten a number of presentations on the procurement processes and things like that. But can we do a little deeper dive on the MBE, DBE, and the LBE program? And it may not necessarily, well, where I was going with that is that sometimes the participation goals, don't seem to be consistent. You may have, like landscaping, for example, had a 30% MBE participation goal. Construction seems to be, around the 24-25%. But then the more technical type of contracts, the engineering, the architecture, tend to be on the lower side. And then janitorial services, 25, we spoke earlier, could be anywhere from 25 to 30% MBE participation. So it seems like with those type of contracts, it's the low-skilled type of labor that we seem to have more ready, willing, and able companies to perform. What kind of outreach are we doing as an agency to kind of get more MBEs in the more technical trades to be involved in this airport? So I'm hoping, if it's okay with you, Chairman, that we can maybe get a presentation on how the goals are established and what kind of outreach we're doing within the community to engage individuals to become aware of MBE certification, DBE, and even local certification opportunities that don't have, a disadvantaged.
So you're suggesting perhaps a workshop? So I think, and by the way, I do think in that speech I just gave, the board learning, particularly with 4 new board members, as much as possible is great, and a lot of learning is educating me. So perhaps you can get with Mr. Brown and Mr. Morning, who heads up the Minority Business Program, and come up with a workshop that could take place perhaps before or after our next meeting. I mean, on whatever schedule you'd like. Does anybody like that idea?
Yeah, that's great.
Because I know that's a passion of yours.
Well, I think it should be everyone's passion, to be honest with you. It's how our economy flows, and it's the heartbeat of our community. We're always talking about, diversifying our industries. What better way than to help our small business community advance?
So I would suggest you and Mr. Brown and Mr. Morning
Certainly,
come up with a workshop.
happy to.
And I think you'll be learning in that process.
Okay.
So you will have to present.
Oh, great, pressure's on.
Teach by learning, or learn by teaching. Great idea. Any other comments? Mr. Mateer, you? All right,
One more.
one more.
Can I ask that the font and the memos of our agendas be changed? Not only is it tiny, which I'm okay with, but that it just be a font that's a little easier to read. It's really taxing on the eyeball.
I could give you my
Oh,
optometrist.
no, I just paid
bought
to get
these
my
glasses.
vision fixed. Oh, no, and I refuse to wear glasses.
Yeah, I think we could do
So
that.
noted.
Thank you.
Good.
Chairman, just one quick comment. I just want to affirm what you said regarding long-term decision-making. I do recognize the makeup of the board, and me being one of those new board members, I certainly have a lot to learn, and I'm endeavoring to do so. But I could not agree more on the idea of making sure that we're long and steady in how we go about what decisions we're making. We're at a very interesting point in time for the authority, and I think all of us would say it's an honor to be here and to be able to serve in this capacity. But any decisions that would go beyond the term of our current CEO that would radically change or impact the long-term standing of the authority should be put on hold for the purposes of making sure that the new CEO is fully vetted, secured, and acclimated with the business climate of the authority. So I agree with your points.
My word was judicious, because there's, I
Yep.
mean, certainly Mr. Maki is buying things that are costing
Sure.
tens of millions of dollars for the South Terminal over the last 10 years, but judicious,
Yep.
yes, I completely agree, and I think that's, we can formulate our visions together over the next few months. Dr. Evans?
Real quickly, Mr. Chairman, I just want to acknowledge Carolyn for the briefing she gave me on client experience, and let's never get lost on the importance of delivering a tremendous client experience. Why? So people go home, they go back to Milwaukee, they go back to wherever, and they tell stories about MCO. That's what I'm interested in, and I think the board is interested in that.
And that's part of operations. It has to be done perfectly every single day, as Mr. Draper knows. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Hey, I forgot to mention, generally, if it's.
Did you get that?